Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Yankoman?
Here.
Trustee Briand?
Here.
Trustee Fisher?
Here.
Trustee Marquis?
Here.
Trustee Rappin?
Here.
Trustee Ryder?
Here.
Thank you. Please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is the consideration of the minutes of the August 9, 2021 Village Board meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Any changes?
Can you stick it still?
Second.
Seconds.
Second.
Any changes?
There was an amendment, there was a slight typo that was passed around in front of you tonight.
Okay. Any more change? So, thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Yankoman?
Aye.
Trustee Briand?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Marquis?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Next is our non-agenda items and visitors. The village president and board of trustees allocates 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the village board of trustees on any matter not listed on this agenda. Each person addressing the village board of trustees is asked to limit their comment to a maximum of 5 minutes. Mr. Russell? Thank you.
Just to remind my compadres who haven't been to as many of these meetings as I have over the years, my name is George Russell, and I'm a resident at 448 Gurney Avenue in Lake Bluff.
Thank you.
Pam Russell, also a resident at 448 Gurney Avenue, Lake Bluff.
David Anderson, resident at 455 Sunset Terrace, Lake Bluff.
I wanted to start. My husband and I have been residents of Lake Bluff for 34 years, and over those years, as I've been running and walking along the bluff, I've often smelled a not so pleasant odor drifting up from the beach. I didn't realize how frequent this problem was until the pandemic and my daily walks going along the bluff and down to the beach. I tell you, very many times I was very happy to have a mask on. So we're here today to hopefully focus the village board's attention on the continuing sewage odor, which is historically, going back all these 34 years, emanated from the sanitary sewage pumping station located in the middle of the beaches, the south and the north beach. The station's owned and operated by the North Shore Water Reclamation District. The station consists of the two industrial-looking buildings located at the bottom of the beach access road. As any Sunrise Beach user is aware, there's always, very often, an unpleasant odor coming from the station. Because the NSWRD also operates a sewage pumping station located at Lake Forest Beach, we thought it might be informative to perform an odor survey, which would compare the sewage odor in the vicinity of the pump station at Lake Bluff Beach versus the sewage odor in the vicinity of the sewage pumping station at Lake Forest Beach.
So then 6 weeks ago, starting on July 15th, several of us began making trips to both the Lake Bluff pumping station and the Lake Forest pumping station. So far, we did a total of 31 visits, and during each of the time, we walked around the total perimeter of the Lake Forest pumping station and as close as we could get to the Lake Bluff station. Because of the way it's situated, we couldn't actually get up right next to the building except on the east and north sides. we, excuse me, and during each of the visits, we noticed an odor at the Lake Bluff pumping station. On 6 occasions, there was an odor at the Lake Forest pumping station. However, that was at one vent at the northern building on the west side of the building. And for that, we had to get within about 5 feet, actually about 3 feet. You could notice an odor. It was never overwhelming, excuse me. But if we backed away 10 feet, no longer could smell it. At the Lake Forest pumping station, it was fortunate we never could get any closer, because if we actually got 3 feet away from it, it would be overwhelming.
David meant the Lake Bluff station. You just said Lake Forest.
I did. Oh, I'm sorry. The Lake Bluff station, because every time there was a visit to the Lake Bluff station, there was a noticeable odor. Sometimes it was fainter than others. It would depend upon the wind direction and speed. And every day we took measurements of the temperature, humidity, wind direction, and wind speed. And there was always a relationship between wind direction and where the odor was noticeable. Oftentimes it was 30 to 50 feet away. It was still pretty strong. And sometimes even on top of the bluff, it was very unpleasant. We'd call it moderate, quite a distance from the station. Most days, you could pick up the odor about halfway down the hill. But it was always present, and on days when there was low humidity and low wind speed, there was, of course, stronger odors. And it was very consistent that we always picked up odors at the Lake Bluff Beach.
So to wrap up, if any of you who have been past routine visitors to the Lake Bluff Beach, you're certainly aware of the sewer odor issue associated with the NSWRD pumping station facility. And it's not something that has just occurred in the last 6 months. It's been ongoing for years and years and years. You can walk into the wave of the sewage odor. The NSWRD stations at Lake Bluff and Lake Forest both perform the same function. The stations collect domestic wastewater and pump that wastewater back westerly to large collector sewers located in the western portions of our respective communities. The wastewater then flows to a large wastewater plant located in Highland Park. Because of the pending massive storage tank project that NSWRD is planning to construct at the Lake Bluff Beach, commencing possibly as soon as the fall of 2022, we urge the village board to aggressively pursue the odor control issue to determine why the odor control system appears to function so much more effectively in Lake Forest than it does in Lake Bluff. If extensive changes are needed to be made to the odor control system at Lake Bluff, it would seem that these changes could best be made as part of this larger construction project. NSWRD should acknowledge and solve the odor control problems at the Lake Bluff facility, regardless of the cause. The sewage odor control at Lake Bluff should function at the same efficiency as that which exists at Lake Forest. Our elected representative, Tom Swarthout, who is here this evening, should assist in determining why there are differences in odor control and what can be done to remedy the situation. In the letter dated July 14th, which was sent from the Park District and Village to the NSWRD regarding the pending storage tank project in Lake Bluff, a number of ancillary improvements were referenced. These included improvements to the appearance and functionality of the pump station building and site, including but not limited to enclosing the backup generator, constructing new public restrooms, installing significant landscaping treatment to the facade and pumping station site, and reconstructing the beach access road, which will probably be needed after this large construction project is completed. And of course, rebuilding the yacht club facilities, because they'll be removed when the tank is built underneath of it. However, no specific mention was made of the odor control problems in the letter, so we wanted to make sure that all the board members are aware of that. Maybe some of you aren't very frequent beach users, but I assure you, any routine beach users can attest to the long-standing problem there. Given that it appears that the Lake Forest facility has significantly better odor control system, we request that the village and park district aggressively pursue ensuring NSWRD make improvements to the odor control system. During a recent visit to the Lake Bluff pump station, a resident asked what we are doing. When we started to tell her about the pump station, she said, "Oh, you mean that stinky place?" It is hoped that board members will start and continue to press staff to pursue odor control improvements so that the Lake Bluff pump station will no longer be known as that stinky place. And I'll just wrap up by saying that having worked in municipal government for almost 30 years, I do know that Drew and other staff members always have 100 things more to do than what they can accomplish. And things get done if a board member or two has a burning desire about an issue and starts pestering Drew. Drew doesn't want me to say this, but it's a fact. It's a fact of life. And we have an opportunity here with this massive project to find out exactly what is going on with the odor control system and to make sure that substantial changes are made to improve it. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We've been living with, at least we can attest, for 35 years. I did this morning call Drew and John Beeler at the Park District, because I was just over there, to let them know we were coming tonight. And Drew did then let the Sanitary District know that we were speaking. So apparently about 5 o'clock, we learned that the Sanitary District has taken bids and is going to be replacing their filters. And we welcome any improvements. But I still ask any of you longtime beach users to question in your own mind, do you ever remember when you haven't walked into a wave of sewage down there when you walk around that building? I believe there are design differences besides the type of filter system. And I think we should, and I would think, and I'm sure, North Shore Water Reclamation District wants to work to improve the situation for us. We certainly hope so. So thank you for your time, and we'll look forward to improving things at Sunrise Beach.
Thank you all, and thank you for your commitment to our community. Thank you. Could you give, I would like to hear from NSWRD representative Tom Swartout. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. George is correct. My name is Tom Swartout. I'm the 4th Ward trustee for the North Shore Water Reclamation District, and I've been doing this for 6-7 years now. Just by background, I was a former member of Lake Forest Park and Rec Department. I was on the chairman for 5 years, and I became an alderman. I was in your position for 6 years. And so I know a lot about city government. I also was on a hospital board for a number of years, and the last 3 years was chairman when I brought in the new president, and now been involved with the new facility. So I know a lot about construction, perhaps not as much as George, but I've been doing this my whole life. I'm a general contractor. I've been doing it since I was in high school. Just not coincidentally, but Winthrop Harbor, one of our other facilities where we have a pump station, we just replaced their filter system. And in early June, the Lake Bluff facility went out to bids for a replacement of the filter system there as well. So I'm glad George has brought this to the attention of the trustees. My phone is always available to respond to any concerns and comments. George is also correct. We have a major project that's going to be undertaken in the next couple of years. The project is virtually completed in terms of its engineering. There's some tweaking that's being done now. We will be certainly receptive to integrating that with the Park District's plans, and we've had discussions with them ongoing. But it is a major project, very similar to what was done in Lake Forest. And by the way, we treat all our facilities equally, so though I'm a lifelong resident of Lake Forest, we don't filter water between communities and treat our facilities any differently than from one municipality to the next, because we operate from the Wisconsin border all the way down to Lake Cook Road. I've been very vocal about not just Lake Bluff, but other facilities that look very industrial. And this is obviously a jewel in Lake Bluff's assets as well in Lake Forest. And so our intention is to recreate that facility so it doesn't have chain link fence and barbed wire and generators that are obtrusive. Even the brick design there is horrible. And so we've already designed some of those modifications with a new project. So we're excited about getting this project underway. It's going to disrupt the beach, I think, for a full summer, but we hope to start in the fall of '22 and lose perhaps a summer for the residents on that one of the beach. But we appreciate some of the issues that were brought forward. We are on it. I have not been down there a half dozen times over the last few months, have not noticed that. We have not, and I checked with our staff, had not been notified by any complaints, any formal complaints. Obviously, there has been issues, and I know George and his wife and Mr. Anderson aren't up here making up those issues, but we will certainly address them and are addressing them. When we went out to bid for the replacements, there are some issues as it relates to parts availability, and we exceeded what was available by staff, so they'll be coming to the board for approval because we exceed our threshold, or their purchasing threshold. So we intend to have this resolved, and we appreciate your time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I do have a question, actually, concerning, so we basically here have a short-term need that is repairing the road and repairing the beach and with the rocks, and you guys addressed that. Thank you very much for that. The odor mitigation was also part of that effort, and so thank you for addressing that now. As George noticed, a lot of smell. My question is really for the longer term, that is, what is your timeline now for basically rebuilding of a facility that is on the beach? And I say that because we are a beach community. Lake Bluff was created as such, and most people I know do spend a lot of time at the beach.
So unfortunately, Mr. President, my wife lived in France for 2 years, but sometimes I don't quite understand what you just said. So,
So what is the timeline for the large rebuild of the beach?
We currently have applied for state funding for the project. It's a $10 million project, and we're very optimistic that we'll be able to get that funding from them. Obviously, we pay that back, but we get some very favorable rates, I think just under 2%. So we're waiting to hear, and that should be within the next few weeks. If we are able to get that funding, we'll proceed as soon as possible to go to bid. And then we will coordinate with, obviously, the village, not just the Park District, but the village manager about how we integrate that with the users of the beach. And by the way, as you may know, we did put in nearly $500,000 of revetments to protect the facility when the lake levels were so high. And we did save some money because of some other activity that was in the area. And I was able to convince the other 4 trustees, who not always are aligned with beautification of Lake Bluff or Lake Forest or the other areas on the North Shore, that we did add another $150,000 to extend the groin out into the lake that would help capture some of the sand as it moved south. So we think we are more than responsible for our facility down there and trying to enhance the beach in addition to that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. You also, we will wait for your response for if you get that loan or you get that money from the state. You mentioned a fall 2022 for start of work. Is that a certainty, or do you have, is that a tentative date?
It's certainly not certain, but we'll be finding out within the next month or two.
Okay,
So the engineering is completed, so for the most part. And I think that the city has those documents as well.
yes. I will wait and hoping for the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I had a question. In terms of noise, there's an objective way to measure noise and say, this is, exceeding a limit that's set, that's reasonable and known. When it comes to smell, is there something that you do or measure or some objective standards so that we can say it passes the sniff test?
It's way over my pay grade. I really don't know. I'm sure there is just the regular common sense smell issue, and I think that should be addressed. There is no better street in Lake Bluff, in my opinion, than Sunrise, and that's a very important asset I know that you have and this community has, and so it can be spectacular if the odor is objectionable. It doesn't
Right.
help anybody.
Well, I guess I was just wondering, is there a way that we can know that there is some measure somewhere? We don't have to know it, and we don't have to say, yes, I approve of
Yeah.
whatever it is, but I just wondered, that would give us some level of assurance and understanding.
Yes. Well, I'll find out.
Thank you.
I can tell you that. I'll find out. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to just follow up on you mentioned that there's, the bid is out for the filter replacement.
It is.
Now, would that project be separate from
Oh,
the,
yeah, that's,
so time-wise, we could hopefully see that at least before?
we received a bid of, the Winthrop Harbor replacement, very similar facility. That facility, that filter was just a little over $30,000. The bids came back at $100,000 and $80,000. And so staff does not have the ability to approve those two bids. They went out to a number of contractors, and two came back. And so we will take this up at our next meeting, which is coming up the second week in September. So that can be installed within a few weeks.
And that, is that filter systems directly relating to is there a direct correlation for the odor and is that going to?
Yeah, well, that will
Yeah.
certainly remedy the issue. Yes, ma'am.
Along those same lines, when did we last replace those filters?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't know. They're kind of carbon filters. George may be able to say when those are replaced on a regular basis, but I really don't know.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
On the order of every few years, or has it been since it was built, or?
No, certainly not since it's been built. No, I think it's periodic. And I don't know whether that's every 2 years, every 5 years, every 6 months. I couldn't
I
answer
see.
that. I'm sorry.
I see. Well, surely not 6 months if it's
That's
monumental to have it replaced. And we'll certainly hope for the best. You said that the drawings are done for the new facility or the renovated facility? Is that right?
We are putting a 1 million gallon tank underneath the parking lot. So it's a big excavation project, a lot of concrete, a lot of structural work that's being done, a lot of excavation, a lot of trucks in and out of that road. I know I met with the president and the city manager about the road condition.
Yeah.
We are, if there is no public entity in the state, I think, that is more frugal than the North Shore Water Reclamation District. For many years, we didn't have debt, and now we have very little. We have bonding capability of up to $400 million. We are very frugal because it's been run by engineers. Engineers don't waste money. And so our intent is to certainly take up that entire road after the project's done.
Oh, no, go ahead, if you've got a stream going.
No, I've forgotten it. Go ahead.
Forgotten it. So it sounds like you're fairly new and not exactly into the technical details. I mean,
Well, I've been doing it about 7 years. so,
about
yeah,
7
we
years.
should-
Okay,
yeah,
so you're not that new. And it sounds like the filters may help, but it sounds like the larger project assuredly will help.
There's no question that the larger project will help this community.
Yeah.
The intent of the tank is in the event of a catastrophic failure, or occasionally you have to do maintenance work. 1 million gallons of wastewater won't end up in Lake Michigan, and it's a rare occurrence, but it happens every 3-4 years,
Yeah.
so.
I guess my comment would be, I've lived in Lake Bluff for 20 years, and I live close to the beach, and I go down there all the time, and I feel the same way as the Russells, and I've always I'm a new trustee, but I've always been like, man, how is this able to happen? This just doesn't seem right. It is assaulting. And now that I sit here, I guess I can bother Drew and be a real sponsor and trying to have an effect here. Is there can somebody come in here and help share with us the plan of technically what the remodel is going to look like and how that's going to solve the odor problem that the Russells have brought up? Not just, I mean, obviously the gallons and saving the overflow is
Yeah.
important, but.
Well, we do have extensive detailed drawings and renderings that show the new facility. It's pretty, I think it's, and listen, I don't need to toot my horn, but a lot of push on my side to try to create something really unique, change the style of that building, skin it,
Yeah.
party decks on the roof, all that crazy stuff that we've kind of imagined, because you'll be out of the box for a good year. So how do we supplement that? And so we've actually designed 2 decks on top of the existing facilities to be able to utilize for events while we're down. And so I will coordinate with Drew about coming back and actually doing a presentation showing you the entire project. It's very
Yeah.
impressive, and it was very disruptive in Lake Forest,
Yeah.
and now you don't know it exists. I mean, in terms of the tank, and it's been utilized a few times, so it's a big insurance policy that I think is sorely needed.
Great, and my last comment, and then I'll let you go, Joy, would be, it would be great, it sounds like, in an unscientific way, the Russells were able to ascertain that there is significantly less odor in Lake Forest than there is in Lake Bluff. I know that that's right.
Well, first off, I'm astounded that anybody could get down to Lake Forest Beach, because I was walking down the other day and I didn't have an ID and they wouldn't let me down, and I live a block away.
Wow, that's true.
So, good for them, and, but,
Early morning.
yeah, I don't know why. I mean, there's very antiquated machinery in there. There's a generator in there that is 75 years old. I mean, you can't get parts for it, but it's still functioning. So it's a very old pumping facility that we skinned, put a cedar shake roof on, and I don't know why there's an odor issue. It perhaps is where it sits. It doesn't sit right up against the bluff. There may be reasons why the odor dissipates, because but I don't know. But the bottom line
if it's
is,
within your folks' means, it would be great for you guys to ascertain what the difference is between the two.
for sure,
We understand.
for sure, we'll look into that, for sure. Yes, ma'am.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you, because I was on the joint committee with the Park District that talked about putting in the basin, so I'm super excited to find out that that's happening and it's moving forward, so thanks for that. My one question was just, I know we're putting the filters in, and then we have a little bit of time before we actually start work on the basin. Is there anything else we can do that's an odor control, that can help control the odor, that we might be able to facilitate in the next, what would that be, year or so?
For sure, for sure. There has to be a reason why that odor is there. It's more than the filter. There has to be some kind of, the pumps aren't being as efficient as possible. There has to be a reason for it, because it's just not acceptable. So you can have a beautiful home. If the septic field in the front is collapsed, it's a nice house, but who wants to go there? And so I feel strongly about it.
I know the filters will make some difference, but I'm just wondering if in the interim there's a little something else, if someone could walk through the facility and say, oh, you know what, we could also do that, we could do that. Not super expensive fixes, but something that would benefit us, just in the short term until we get the big project going.
absolutely look into that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
I just wanted to clarify that procedurally to your question, Trustee Rappin, that this property, the pumping facility itself is located within the village's recreational institution and open space development, RIO, or Recreation Institution and Open Space Zoning District. And therefore it's subject to a process that it'll have to go through for a plan review as part of that. So that'll come through that process. And so that'll be, and there's, like, this is years off, and so it's still kind of a question mark about, is it gonna happen in the fall of '22 or not? But so we would time that process, so there would be a public process, but as Mr. Swarthout has stated, that these plans have been in the working for over a decade.
Yeah, we were prepared to move forward almost a decade to do this, and obviously it involves just not the village board, but the park district, and I think the timing and
The Lake Bluff Yacht Club, they've all have input.
The appetite
in this
is-
plan,
yeah.
but there's been process, and it's been informal to date, but the idea that there'll be a formal process, that will happen. But a lot of these improvements that I would say that are new, that the Park District has talked about, like adding on restrooms as part of this project for the South Beach and some other improvements. But I think, again, going back to Mr. Russell's earlier comment, one of the things not noted in that letter that was sent out to the NSWRD was talking about odor control issues, and that's something that sounds like could be added to ensure that gets addressed as part of this project.
it should be.
Yeah.
It absolutely should be. And by the way, that letter was sent to the former president of the district, and I just received a copy of it 3 days ago. So I wasn't aware of the letter that George sent,
I see.
and just until recently.
Any more questions of the board?
I just want to thank the Russells and Mr. Anderson for coming and bringing it up. We notice and we care.
Tom, thank you very much for coming here.
Great to see you.
And,
Good to see you.
Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, Russell and Mr. Anderson, thank you very much for your 31 visits.
See,
It's like Baskin Robbins, it's not.
Thank you.
thanks.
Hi, I'm Ved Sankar, and I live at 46 East Scranton in Lake Bluff. And I'm also the owner of B Market, right downtown Lake Bluff. B Market's been here almost 4 years. October is going to be 4 years. And so the reason I'm here is because I wanted to address an issue, hoping that you guys can help resolve it. When COVID started, the village had reached out to us asking if we wanted space outside for our customers. But at the time, I declined it because, I thought the COVID issue would have been long gone, didn't expect it to be ongoing this long. And over the time, my customers have been requesting to sit outside for extra space. And so I reached out to ask the village if we can get a space, but apparently there's a tent that's set up there, and it's supposed to be a temporary tent, but the tent is bolted to the ground, and it may be difficult or somewhat difficult to move it, but it is a temporary tent. And so I'm here just to ask the board to consider, asking the other business owners to be able to move their space down so B Market can have about 20 feet of space so that we can put some tables for our customers. Sometimes our customers may go outside and sit out there, but the other businesses would say to them, hey, this is not your space, and they'll have to move, and it becomes a big inconvenience for our customers. And so, yeah, I'm just here hoping to, to ask for your consideration if we can consider asking the other business to move over 20 feet so we can have B Market can have some space as well. Any questions?
So a little more context. So as Vade pointed out, we did reach out to all the restaurants and other drinking establishments and said, hey, the village board is looking to work with you all to give you places to go and offer outdoor service. Vade participated in those conversations, and as he stated, he declined at the time, and optimistically, hasn't worked out that well, right? Unfortunately, COVID continues to plague us. Here we are with masks on today. But I think there may be a different way to skin this cat. The request that Vade is making is I think, a pretty large request to ask these other businesses who have, participated early on and worked together with the village to set up the space. And I think it would be a lot to ask them to pay somebody to come in and move the tent and do that. Alternatively, I think one of the things that we talked about early on with all the restaurateurs was, are there other spaces that better suits their needs? And there are some parallel parking stalls on the east of your building that could be utilized for outdoor service as well. And that was one of the earlier areas that we adopted. It would require the village to close off that portion of the street that has not been previously closed off. The existing resolution that granted the village administrator the authority to work with businesses to block off portions of the street was approved back, I want to say in March. And let me double check that, February. But it did authorize me, the village administrator, to work with businesses to do that up until the end of this calendar year. So the village is obviously getting ready to embark on this streetscape study, and what ultimately happens with the uses of these spaces, is this going to be set aside as it is today? Don't know, but for the near term, at least certainly through the end of this calendar year, I can work with Vade to look on some other work, on these other alternative scenarios. But I think his specific request this evening may be a big ask of those restaurateurs that have been established in those areas and set up for a long time.
I guess I just wonder, why is that? I don't understand why that's a big ask and why we can't just use space that's currently there, why that's not possible.
Yeah, and I think because the way it was set up was I think the originally concept was that each restaurant would look to have something directly outside their front door, right? The idea that people would come out and make use of those spaces. The far western side that's by the bank is kind of a free for all space. Donati's Pizza has used it. The other restaurants have used it in overflow situations on other evenings. It's not necessarily spoken for. Certainly you could use that space if you like. It's a little further from your door. If you're looking for something specifically adjacent to your sidewalk, those parallel stalls on Walnut that are directly contiguous to your building where you already have outdoor dining, I mean, that's the opportunity I was noting earlier.
So
But,
what is right outside his door? Somebody else's?
well, his door is kind of right by the bump out by the park, and then it
Right.
shifts a little bit. It's in front of Mavry's, because Mavry's is his neighbor to the west.
Right?
And so Mavry's is right across that space, and then it's the brewery, and then it's like this kind of open, free-for-all space.
But aren't the three
I mean-
spaces, the 15-minute spots, wouldn't that, first of all, that would impede, I don't think Hansa would go for that, because I sit outside and they pull in and pull out.
Right.
But also that would put you at odds with them. I have to say, just as an aside, sitting at the table, we had food from your place the other day, and in the evening at dusk, watching people cross servers to get from one side to the other just gives me heart palpitations, because people go zipping through there, and a lot of motorists are not paying attention as they take the turn. So just as an aside, I think it's a really dangerous setup. But I see your point. And I agree with Barbara. I think, I understand it's sort of first come, first served, but under the circumstances, I think have a long road ahead of us. I don't think this is a lot to ask, and it would just put him at odds with Hansa and remove more parking, which we cannot do. We just can't afford to do that.
I have a question on that as well. We have a space in front of Mavry's that is on the other side of the street that was concrete barriers, was Denver barriers, right? The name, and they're movable.
Yes.
Could we extend that space to accommodate the B market and VAD on that? To create a space that would be more toward maybe, if we were to move that toward Invoice, for example, and create a space.
Into the crosswalk.
Somewhat near there,
Yeah.
yes. So that creating a space that would be next door to Mavry's, literally. on the other side of the street. Is that a possibility?
Say that again.
Isn't there space?
Wait, I'm
Is
sorry,
it-
say
is
that
there-
again, the location where you.
So when you look at Mavry's and you look at the brewery, there is space on the other side of the street that is toward the park. That is where people are sitting, and there is a tent for the brewery, for example. When you go toward Mavry, you have those concrete barriers
Right.
that are basically facing Innovacy, okay?
Yeah.
Could you actually move those barriers basically
add some tables there.
eastward, so that we could create space for the market?
How many tables were you thinking you wanted to add?
So I was looking at maybe 9 tables. A couple considerations. I looked at it, there's one tent that's situated. Everything else are tables that's really easy to move. This one tent was bolted down to the ground. And logistically, I don't think it's gonna take a lot for them to unscrew the bolts and move the tent down. That's my personal opinion. It doesn't, first of all, it's supposed to be temporary and not a permanent structure. So I think it wouldn't be a lot. I understand it's inconvenience, but I feel like it's in the best interest of my customers.
Yeah.
Secondly, the space on the side, it's big enough for those 15-minute car spots, but it's not wide enough where we can consider putting up a tent, for example, in the wintertime.
Right.
Plus, at the post office, it gets very busy, so a lot of people come parking there so they can run to get coffee or go to the post office, which will create a lot of issues, I feel. Now that I think about it, that if we block that space off, and again, I'm not sure how Hansa is going to react to that as well.
Mr. Sankar, are you thinking about putting up a tent for your tables as well?
I am considering it, depending on how far COVID goes. If it goes deep into winter time, we may consider putting a tent as well.
So did Mavry's and all those other business owners that jumped on board, they jumped on board, but is it that they contributed X thousands of dollars and therefore they have more of a right? Or I don't understand why we can't just, if it's like that, with this being kind of free-for-all, why can't we go like that and just,
Justify it.
it just doesn't,
Shift everybody down.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, why not?
I can talk to them. I think the initial reaction, did you reach out to them first, the brewery, and the reaction was
Yes,
negative?
I reached out to Greg at Mavry's, and he's very happy to move it down. I reached out to the brewery, and they said it's inconvenient for them to unscrew the tent. And I'm like, well, it's a temporary structure. It should be, if the village requested it to be moved, it should be moved.
Yeah.
I didn't do this purposely. It's just,
Right, here we are.
Yeah, here we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, I mean, I think people made good decisions at the time, and now it's a different point in time, and maybe we can make a different decision. And certainly, if it's something that the other business owners purchased and kept within their property, that's one issue, but it doesn't sound like that's it. It's common property, it's something that the village has extended, and something that is temporary, it is doable. I don't think it's like coming up to the Foursquare game and saying, well, you weren't here when we decided we were playing Foursquare.
Yeah.
That's just playground nonsense.
Did we specifically allocate space though, or did we just offer the space and let the businesses decide how and where their tent would go, et cetera? In other words, are parts of that section specifically decided, this is Mavry's, this is the breweries?
When it originally started, I think it was contemplated that most restaurants would want to do something, and so I think we said the easiest thing would make it be right out their doorstep. So Vade would have a spot right out front of his store, then Mavry's, then the brewery, then whomever, there would be that space that other people could use and can be shared space. But at the time, it was like, well, these people are interested, others are not. And so, so they wanted to make the maximum use of the space that was being granted in the public space. So they said, okay, well, then Mavry's and the brewery said, well, we'll take this and you'll take this, and there we go. And that's how it kind of worked out. And so they just kind of worked it out amongst themselves.
So is there an issue, when the brewery declined, did they express that there was an issue as far as like an expense? Because perhaps, I don't know, if the village necessarily needs to step in yet. My question is there maybe some kind of negotiation that could happen where you offer to assist in the actual moving of the tent?
I actually offered
Yeah.
to assist my physical time and labor to help move everything.
Yeah.
And again, Mavery's was happy to move around. The brewery said, no, we don't want to move, it's inconvenient.
Well, given the fact that it's on public property, I think that we should have the right to invite them to do the right thing by their neighbor.
Yeah, be a
The
good
only
neighbor.
way we have gotten through this is by helping each other. And I think that the brewery should extend that same sense of community to you. It's the right thing to do. We need to do whatever we can to facilitate business. And you're busy, which is great. And so let's help you out. I think it's easy. What we're talking about moving is so simple, and it's just, if the space at the western edge is sort of a no man's land,
Yeah.
let's utilize it accordingly and have it not be a no man's land and make room so that everyone can grow their business during this time. This is an unprecedented time.
Right.
And we just have to make these kinds of decisions. Barbara's right, you know, you can't hold it against a business owner because they are not Nostradamus. I mean, that's just crazy. No one knew how this was going to pan out. But now that we know and we kind of have a sense of what the fall and winter is going to be like, we need to act accordingly. And that's just the equitable thing to do.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
I do agree with you. I think this is shared public community space, and I think we need to be fair to the different businesses to have a chance to thrive and subsist and thrive during that time. That is not that easy for all of us. So yeah, I would be of the same opinion then.
The other constituency that we'll have to balance is the farmer's market and the farm, you know, that's
that's
kind of
true.
shrinking, but I think we can figure it out.
Fortunately, I assume you're talking about looking into the winter as well.
Yeah.
So there we have, that's a different kettle of fish. And unfortunately, the farmer's market does come to a close, but at least that, having that overlap now is only going to be in the next, 2 months? And then,
Probably.
so at least there's that. I know there's a lot of moving parts during the farmer's market, but everybody, I think, has risen to the occasion beautifully. So I just think Barbara raises a really good point. Let's do the right thing here.
We can do it.
I just have one
Yeah.
last question. Are you able to utilize the tables there by Hansa? Like, do your patrons also utilize the outside tables? Or would that be on the east wall of the building between like your front door and Hansa's front door, kind of on that? Is Hansa open to you using those, just so you, at this point, you have a little more space?
Well, we share that space today, so both of our customers do sit there.
Okay. Okay,
Right
so you do have a little bit of outside space.
You-
for
we-
people to
yes, we
sit
do.
now, just
Yes.
to kind of hold you over until we figure out
Yes.
the details.
Yeah, he is currently outdoor dining in front of his restaurant and around the corner.
Okay.
And I don't know who ultimately would negotiate this, but I think your place is directly in front of you is the crosswalk.
Right.
So you'd have to kind of go over at an angle, and if you're going to put 9 tables, it would push everybody further west. So they may not be linked up where they're directly in front anymore, and their wait staff has to move. Someone's just going to have to help negotiate it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
The logistics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I looked at it and it's about 18, 20 feet of space, and there would still be space in front where Mavery's, part of their space would be in front of their restaurant as well. Plus the space is really long, and Drew, you had mentioned, for us to consider using the space all the way at the end, but it's really very far, it's more than 100 feet, and it's very hard for our service people to take food down there and bring it back. Wasn't making sense for us.
How about excuse me, how about the allocation of space? So does it depend on how much frontage of
There was no formula. when
no
this was-
formula at all?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and maybe there need not be, but,
Yeah, there's been to your point earlier, there's been a great amount of esprit de corps to date.
to date, yeah,
To date, and so they've worked it out very well.
okay. And let's hope that continues.
Yeah.
Because I do think we need to make this work somehow.
Yeah, and this is one of those unique situations to Vade's. This is, I think, a great Lake Bluff story is, you remember before Vade took over B Market and started that business that used to be Wisma, and that the village created this unique liquor license for that store that has evolved, and I think Vade inherited or applied for and got, but the idea that his store is not a restaurant under the village's zoning code. It's a food store. And that he has a limited amount of area in his storefront that it can actually be called a restaurant, right? The idea, so it's a limit, so he can't, it's kind of been there's not been a very bright line, but we certainly said around a third is what we kind of held it to. And so when you walk in that store, you walk in and there's food items on shelves, but there's really, the sit-down space has always been limited, and that was true of Wisma, and that's been true of B Market as well. So the idea of growing the restaurant side of the business, it's a pandemic and try to find ways to work, but the idea is that there's something to be cognizant of, right? That he's trying to walk a fine line from a zoning use standard as well, so wrinkles everywhere.
But this would be takeout, right? So we always get food and sit out in front and take out. So it's kind of like still a store. Like you go into foodstuffs and you take it out and sit outside. You can sit inside, but everybody's outside. So I see what you're saying, but I think that you're walking the fine line just fine.
Yeah.
What I see a lot of people doing is going in, getting a bottle of wine, sitting outside, enjoying the evening, like last night at Bluff, which we did. It's very pleasant. So I get what your point is about wanting to make sure you don't veer into the place where the brewery and Mavory occupy, but I'm not.
Different parking standards, different requirements,
So do you feel like this would blur that line too much?
I think a pandemic's a pandemic, and,
Right.
so.
Okay, yeah, I think sometimes you just have
Yeah.
to
Yep,
I just
allow things to happen.
yeah.
I had one last point. So as we continue to add more and more outdoor dining, just want to make sure we're cognizant that sidewalks are clear, crosswalks are clear, pedestrians can get through, since that's the main point of the sidewalk. So as we add tables, I know it'll be across the street, but just make sure that on that corner, the corner closest to your building, that the tables are clear and people can walk freely on those corners, and then have a nice seating area across the street, or kind of tucked in that little front corner of the building. I think that'd be great.
Drew, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask, that kind of impromptu COVID party area or outdoor dining area, the idea is that is there until things are safe and we're done. There is no end date at this point.
Well, the end date is the end of this calendar year right now, pursuant to the resolution that was passed in February. Now, that
Okay.
can be amended by this body at any time.
Unless it's amended.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that when the board did that in February, it was the restaurants were saying, we know we're gonna need help coming out, at the first, second quarter, we don't know what's gonna happen. Can we at least get some, and I think the board then was, let's give you some comfort knowing that we're gonna give you, a period of time to get back on your feet, and, hopefully the health conditions don't get worse, and we don't go back to limiting the number of folks that can be in restaurant spaces again. But to answer your question, yes, there is a sunset date on this, but it can be changed.
I guess one thing I'm thinking about is that it's possible that rather than move the tent, the brewery could allow some portion of the tent to be used by Mavory, right? I mean, it doesn't, I don't know.
There
Now
could be
that-
other ways to solve it, and we can work through it that way.
Okay.
Yep.
Because just because they put down stakes there doesn't mean they always have that square footage necessarily even.
Yeah.
So I think we need to get creative and give Vade the space he needs to continue to operate.
Yep. We can do it.
Thank you very much for coming here, and let's be fair. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And
Thank you for your commitment to the community.
thank you. It's a great community. To be honest, since I was born in the Caribbean, and I've lived many places in Canada and the US, and everywhere I lived, I hated it. And I would say Lake Bluff is the one community that I absolutely love. People are really friendly, really nice, and it's an amazing place, and I feel fortunate to be part of the community, so thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, item number 5, the village board sets the order of the meeting. The village president and board of trustees will entertain requests from anyone present on the order of business to be conducted during this village board meeting. Are there any requests to alter our regular agenda order? See the agenda. Let's move on. Item number 6, our village finance report. Is there a motion to approve the warrant?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. The expenditure of village fund for payment of invoices is in the amount of $423,539.60 for August 10 to August 23rd, 2021. Reports and documents attached are the warrant report for August 10, August 23rd, 2021 for, again, $423,539.60 dated 8/10 to 8/20, 2021. The invoice register report shows check with a status of open or paid. All checks with a status of open are computer-generated checks for the board final approval. Checks with a status of paid are manual checks processed. Any questions?
I had a question that Drew and I spoke earlier just about a couple of issues, but the one I wanted to talk about was the City of Lake Forest and the intergovernmental services. You know, it's a big number, and it's a number that's budgeted for, and so the question was, can we look at these intergovernmental, you know, charges and kind of just bump that up against what we budgeted to happen, and how does that line up?
Yeah, Bettina, you want to address that?
I can. Sorry, I have to pull up the email that I sent with the budget numbers. 1 second.
The short answer is that the line items are not located in one place. For example, the ambulance fees are located in the fire department's budget, so it doesn't all fall under the same line item, and those are spread out. And so it's not in, like, you don't go looking in one place to find all the intergovernmental fees, the shared fees and so forth. But
right.
Some of you may not know, so the village has had an IGA or intergovernmental agreement with the City of Lake Forest for decades for a variety of services to include building inspection and plan reviews. The village shares services with them on youth services through Croya, for senior services at Dickinson Hall. We have been a customer of them for ambulance forever, almost, and we not too long ago worked with them. They were looking to raise their fees to reflect the actual cost of the service, and those went up, and we were in a dispute with them over that, the rates as well as the time period for which they applied, and we ultimately resolved that between us. And so that's, I guess, more context, but this agreement is something that gets revisited every 3 to 5 years or so, and depending on whether either party has a concern or change in service level requirements. But Bettina, I don't know if you had a moment to get to where you were trying to get to.
I do, yep. So the intergovernmental services make up Croya, the senior center, and building inspection costs. And that budgeted amount for the year is $217,500. And then the ambulance service contract costs come from another part of the budget, and that budgeted annual number is $400,000. And then, if you recall, this year we also bumped out the recapture costs that were part of the contract, and those also lie in a separate line for $175,000. So while the warrants kind of bunching together all the payments to Lake Forest, they are coming from separate budget lines, so it isn't all one place for intergovernmental services.
And specifically with the ambulance, we're looking at $132,000 for that Q1 number. And if we kind of just extrapolate it out, we've got enough with the 400 and the 175. Is that how we look at it?
Yeah, the 175 was actually a hard number that was in the contract that we agreed to. So that number is spent and it's to the penny. And the 400,000 is what we estimate based on historical data and the new costs that were part of the contract. So, I mean, is there the potential that we could have more calls than anticipated? Hopefully not, but that's the number that we budgeted. And it looks to be in line so far based on the 1 quarter.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any more questions? This is a roll call vote. Clerk, please call the vote.
Trustee Briand?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
And Trustee Ankman.
Aye.
Thank you. Next is our August, our July 2021 finance report. Finance Director O'Connell, could you please provide highlights?
Sure. The monthly sales tax revenue on a cash basis for July FY22 is $324,529, which is $120,268 or 58.9% greater than the July 21 cash basis receipts of $204,260. FY22 year-to-date sales tax revenue is $248,496 greater than the May through July FY21 cash basis receipts. Building permit revenue for fiscal year 22 to date is $121,680, which is $24,355 greater than the same reporting period in last fiscal year. General fund fiscal year 22 total revenues of $3,684,052 are $464,938 or 14.4% greater than the July fiscal year 21 year-to-date revenues. In fiscal year 22 current expenditures are consistent with or less than budgeted. The June fiscal year-to-date expenditures of $2,397,327 are $129,375 less than the expenditures for the same period in FY21. And the number in the American Rescue Plan Act information paragraph was updated from the last cover memo to the most recent estimated allocation, which is $756,000, 121.69.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
I had a quick question. I just, going through the report, Bettina, I noticed that sales taxes increased quite a bit. We've seen these large swings now in increase in sales tax, and I know some of that has to do with last year being, the pandemic. But it seems like even year over year from the year previous, that we are seeing higher than normal sales tax revenues. I talked to you earlier about this. Like, do you think that what we're seeing is going to continue? Do you think that trajectory is going to continue, or we're seeing increased sales tax in that capacity, or do you think that's not as sustainable as it's representing?
And if it's all right, Trustee Markey, I'll go and answer, and Bettina, you can sprinkle in differently.
Sorry, it's a long question.
We did not talk, but my answer to Trustee Markey was, when the stock market's doing well, generally speaking, sales tax grows with auto sales, and that's what we see in Lake Bluff. And we do know for various reasons that there's only so much product out there, and so that there's only a limited number of cars that they can sell. So the information that we've read and generally understanding is, and let me clarify, so 2/3 of the village's sales tax is from auto sales. So it's something we're particularly mindful of and try to pay attention to, but so we don't necessarily think it's sustainable in the long term to keep growing, but it seems that we're grateful for the drive that's been what's been there, and it seems we've picked up on the same trajectory we had left off from the pandemic in terms of the slope of the growth is where it should be had there not been a pandemic, and that continued to grow. That's the short answer.
Okay.
So, but there's always a crystal ball involved. It's our future is only as clear as we can see through a murky glass. So, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Bettina.
I mean, I don't. I do track the sales tax dollars separately just to look at the historical data, and it appears that you're right. We have picked up from quarters prior in sales tax for automotive. Definitely higher than we were in 2020, and even as far back as first quarter, as far back as I can look 10 years, it's higher. But it is the same on par as it was in quarters prior from prior years, not necessarily the first quarter. So do I think it's sustainable? No, I think it'll level off just as the economy levels off. So right now we're just fortunate in that we're recapturing what we've lost.
Thanks.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Bettina. No more questions?
Welcome.
Thank you. This is a voice call.
We need a motion. We need a motion.
Motion.
Could I please entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. This is a voice call, a voice vote again. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Next is our village administrator report.
No report this evening.
Thank you. And next is our village attorney's report.
No report tonight.
Thank you. I do not have a report either. So item number 10, acceptance of a correspondence. Is there a motion to accept the correspondence?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the
Voice
vote.
vote.
So voice vote. So this is, so voice vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next is item number 11, an ordinance amending the Lake Bluff zoning regulation concerning yards and lot width for irregular zoning lots. Could I please entertain a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. During the village consideration of the recent Arden Shores subdivision and other recent development proposals, 2 areas of ambiguity in the zoning regulations were identified that staff recommends addressing. 1, it is not clear where or how the front of a lot that does not front on a public street should be located. Number 2, some irregular lots, such as lots shaped like a flag, panhandle, or T, have artificially small width. This can affect the maximum height, too short, permitted impervious surface, too much percentage, or side yard width, too small based on the district. The attached ordinance corrects for these unusual situations without allowing the creation of new irregular lots by not changing how minimum width or frontage are calculated. It allows the building commissioner to determine the front lines or lines of irregular lots, and provide alternate rules for calculating the lot width of some irregular lots. The PCZBA memorandum includes example plats that show how these rules would work in practice. The PCZBA reviewed this item at its March and April 2021 meetings and opened a public hearing to consider the amendments at its August 2021 meeting. At that time, the PCZBA unanimously recommended the village board approve the amendment. Any questions?
I had a question about the reason for this action that is being taken. You know, I understand that there was some ambiguity and that is being addressed, but, you know, a kind of a two-part question. Is there anything that we know of on the horizon that would benefit from this specifically? You know, we know that, you know, something is going to be applied for, is imminently going to be applied for, that this might also benefit, or is it just a cleanup? And then, as a follow-up, is this kind of clearing a path for then more of this irregular, unusual, non-standard type activity to happen?
Yeah, I think the first question, to our knowledge, we don't have any applications that would rely on this immediately. Is there, Glenn, anything sitting in the hopper?
Yeah, so there's no applications we're expecting coming forward. I will say one of the example plats you have is the Arden Shores plat.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this moment, the height limit on that lot that was created is 28 feet, which is the lowest possible in the village because the width is defined by that access pole.
Mm-hmm.
So that lot would benefit. There's not a house built there yet. There will be, but there's nothing else coming forthcoming as far as new development applications that I know of.
But given the size of the lot, I mean, it seems more like just a reasonable thing to say that something taller than that could be built in any other situation. It's just in this particular irregular situation, the technical limit is very small, and so this it remedies that particular
Yeah, I
situation.
think that's how we would have interpreted the code to reflect a lot of that, because it's an enormous lot. I mean, the
Right.
total, do you know how many acres it is?
The dimensions there on the plat, but it's
It's almost
300
8.
20-some.
Yeah, it's, so
Lot 1 is almost
the idea
8.
of limiting the height of that seems inconsistent and
Yes.
irrational. So I think the idea, we would say that this clarifies how we would have interpreted the code, and so it's cleaning that up. So really a cleanup,
Yeah.
to your point.
And then the second part was, well, then do we feel like we're clearing a path for some, strange divisions of land moving forward, and it might get a real, strange look to future development?
And the answer would be no, and that the code, while not expressly prohibiting flag lots, doesn't encourage it, and in fact punishes flag lots because of the way it calculates buildable floor area as well as lot coverage. And so the idea that the persons typically don't want to do that, and so, but it doesn't create any new paths that were already there today, so.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
Any more questions? So this is a first reading approval, and this is a voice vote. Clerk, please call the vote.
Voice vote, you can call voice vote.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? This motion carries. Thank you very much. Next is our trustee report. Do any trustee wish to make a report this evening? Next, without any, okay, thank you very much. Next is our consideration of the August 9, 2021 executive session meeting minutes. Could I please have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved?
Second?
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you. Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Marquis?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Ankerman?
Aye.
Trustee Briand?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. I understand that we have a closed session to discuss pending litigation tonight.
Correct.
Could I please get a motion to get into closed session?
So moved?
Second.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Marquis?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Ankerman?
Aye.
Trustee Briand?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Thank you. This concludes the open part of a village board meeting. Thank you to anyone in attendance, and have a great evening. Thank you very much.